If spring is sprung, then it's budget time, although he wants this one to be the very last, having decided to move this great taxing and spending event to the autumn. But this budget really matters because there are just days before the woman next door makes the formal notification of our intention to leave the EU.
As we start our negotiations to exit the European Union, this budget takes forward our plan to prepare Britain for a brighter future.
Oh, the pressure. Well, the man known as Spreadsheet Phil Hammond didn't seem to feel it.
This is the spreadsheet bit, but bear with me because I have a reputation to defend.
So what about the numbers that decide how much comes into his kitty? Well, good and bad news on the growth of our national income.
Reflecting the recent strength in the economy, the OBR has upgraded its forecast for growth next year from 1.4% to 2%. In 2018-19, growth is forecast to slow to 1.6% before picking up to 1.7%.
And what does the Treasury's forecasting arm, the OBR, predict for the government's still large deficit, the amount it borrows every year? Well, swings and roundabouts.
The OBR has substantially revised down its short-term forecast of public sector net borrowing. The OBR attributes this change to a number of one-off factors that they do not expect to lead to a structural improvement over the forecast period.
So not a lot extra in the kitty, which is one reason why Philip Hammond opted for a controversial tax rise in the national insurance rate paid by the self-employed.
I make no apology for raising additional revenues and for doing so in ways which enhance the fairness of the system.
But in the detail he gave, he somehow forgot to mention that his party pledged in its 2015 general election manifesto not to increase national insurance.
The lower national insurance paid by the self-employed is forecast to cost our public finances over £5 billion this year alone. This is not fair to the 85% of workers who are employees.
From Peter to Paul, or higher taxes to fund an emergency £2.4 billion social care bailout, with a more fundamental solution to the crisis in looking after our elderly infirm promised for the next budget.
The long-term challenges of sustainably funding care in older age requires a strategic approach.
But for Labour's leader, it was the increase in national insurance for the self-employed, which he said was unfair.
We have long argued for clampdown on bogus self-employment. But today, the Chancellor seems to put the burden on self-employed workers instead.
The party of aspiration, taxing those who are self-employed, putting in active, real hard disincentives to starting businesses, to employing people, to stepping out on one's own.
This was a clear breach of your manifesto commitment not to raise national insurance.
The intent behind that manifesto commitment was legislated for. It went through
after the election.
Yeah, but it went through both houses of Parliament. There was a full debate on that, and there were no amendments.
A day of great moment and seriousness for her?
Not quite announced them, Mr. Deputy Speaker, because my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, has already announced two of them.
It's International Women's Day.
It says that.
Not exactly the Chuckle Brothers, but...
And by the way, they don't call it the last Labour government for nothing. From, apparently, the right honourable gentleman opposite, who is now so far down a black hole that even Stephen Hawking has disowned him.
He's not laughing, but he might be tomorrow when he sees headlines savaging his national insurance increase. Robert Peston, ITV News.